Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Timpler from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. I'd like to welcome you today to edition 30 of the Food Safety Fridays webinar series. My word, 30 webinars this year. For those of you who've been with us for everyone, well done. Probably you and me, that's all. Today, I'm delighted to say that we've got Karen Leacock-Bingham, Senior Project Manager, Consulting and Technical Services from NSF International. Today, Karen's going to be speaking about food packaging specifically and GFSI standards, requirements for compliance. There are various food packaging standards, GFSI benchmarks, and Karen's going to be telling us about those and the certification process and the benefits and the pros and cons, etc. So, hoping for a good webinar today. I'd like to thank, as I do each week, the sponsors, FSSC, IFS, Safe Food 360 and Trace Analytics. They help to bring these webinars free of charge to you every week and get a free certificate of attendance. So marvelous. I can see Karen's online. So hi, Karen, how are you doing?
I'm good, Simon. Good morning to everyone, or afternoon or evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, and you're in Ontario, is that right?
Yes, I'm in Ontario in Canada.
Super. And is it lovely and sunny there today?
It is beautiful weather today. It's nice and warm today for us.
And you're looking radiant, I must say. Okay, if you can get your slides ready, Karen, I'll just talk about next week's webinar with the audience and I'll be back to you in a couple of minutes. Okay. Right, ladies and gents, next week we have Ruth Bell. Ruth Bell's back next week. If you remember rightly, Ruth presented the very first Food Safety Fridays webinar back in January. And I think actually she's done one in between. Anyway, next week, Ruth's going to be talking about TACCP, T-A-C-C-P, all these acronyms, TACCP, HACCP, VACCP. Well, Ruth next week will be uncovering the principles of managing food safety in TACCP. And TACCP is Threat Analysis and Critical Control Point. I'm not going to go into detail what it's about. In fact, I don't really know the full ins and outs of it. I've got to be honest with you. So I'm looking forward to learning and sharing with Ruth next week. Hopefully you'll join us. If you click that register now button, it opens a new window and you can just pop your email and name in there. You won't come out of the webinar, it just opens a new window. So feel free to register for that. Also, that's next Friday. Next Thursday, we've got the Practical HACCP training webinar. That is a paid one next Wednesday. It's $97, but we've got quite a few people registered for that. And it's a 4-hour webinar. Again, you can find, I'll pop that in during the webinar and you can register for that or find out further details. So that's it. Without further ado, I shall take you over to Karen. I'll be back for the Q&A later. Actually, we'll be having some polls during, so I'll be running the polls and I'll be back for the Q&A later. So for now, over to Karen. Okay. All right, Karen.
Okay, so today we're going to look at the various GFSI standards in terms of food packaging. So we're going to focus on 4 of them specifically. These 4 currently cover the requirements for food packaging manufacturers, and then we'll deal a little bit with certification versus third-party audits, what are the benefits of certification, and then the overview of the entire certification process. If we think about packaging, when we look way back then, there were various forms used to carry or contain products. We see here on the slide, we've got everything from vials and gourds, leaves were used at times, and just any other forms that people at the moment could use for transporting food from one location to the other. But now, when we come to today, packaging has evolved so much to the point where the package is actually becoming the plate. And as such, food packaging manufacturers are a key component of the food supply chain. There is increasing demand by customers, consumers, and legislation, so that packaging also needs to meet the requirements in terms of food safety. The aim of packaging standards is to ensure that the manufacture and provision of food-safe packaging materials, and of course, we want to ensure that we reduce the risk to consumers of any hazards in the packaging that can cause them to become ill in any way. Under the Global Food Safety Initiative, there are several standards, as you can see on the screen, that address packaging. And we're going to have a look at these in a little bit more detail. The GFSI packaging scope applies to the manufacture of packaging, packaging material, packaging components, and products for use in the food supply chain. So we are looking at all the different range of packaging materials. As you can see on the slide, we look at everything from plastics, whether it is flexible or rigid plastic packaging, and then we have metal. So we have steel containers or aluminum containers. We're talking about cans that you see, whether it's for things like soda items or for everything from beans, tomato sauce, those sort of things. We also have glass, which has been used for many, many years. And we saw it primarily used for things like milk, but now glass is used, whether it's vials, bottles, jars, throughout the food industry. Then there's paper and paperboard, so everything from carton board, corrugated board, and we are seeing that this is also being used, paper and paperboard, even for containing juices, and that's become a lot more popular. And we also have natural materials like wood and natural fibers. There is another category of materials that we're also seeing, which is recycled materials, as well as corn-based materials. So we are seeing a lot more other materials coming from renewable resources as well, and those are going to have to be considered as we move forward into the future. So our first question that we have for all of you is, are you already certified to a GFSI standard for packaging?
Okay, I've loaded that in the sidebar, ladies and gentlemen. Are you already certified to a GFSI standard for packaging? Possible answers: yes, no, or working towards. And can you see the results in the sidebar there, Karen, coming through? Or not, maybe. If not, we've got at the moment, yes, 40%, no, 32%, and working towards 28%. So yeah, about a third of the audience have, probably about half have not, and 20% working towards. So yeah, we've got plenty of people who are wondering and interested in how you go about it and the different options. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Okay,
that's great. So hopefully by the end of the presentation, it will help to make it a little clearer for you. What's been happening is that the definition of packaging is actually changing. When we think of primary packaging, and primary packaging is considered for direct food contact. And when we think about primary packaging, that's changing. If we look at a simple example of something like a flexible pouch, a flexible plastic pouch that has a tomato sauce and it's packed in a box of macaroni or some sort of pasta, if that flexible plastic pouch that has the sauce breaks for some reason and the sauce starts seeping through to the box with the pasta noodles, then the box with the pasta noodles actually now becomes the primary package. So you can see how that certainly will affect various companies in terms of what you're providing for your customers. So let's look at the standards. There are similarities in the standards, and they all have requirements for HACCP, which is hazard analysis and critical control points. So irregardless of whichever standard you choose to become certified to, you will have to have a HACCP program in place. The standards also focus on management commitment, and this is a key component in all of the GFSI standards. There's also requirements for internal audits, and so for your food safety and quality team, it will be very important for you to conduct annual internal audits to ensure that your food safety program is functioning as it should. Another key requirement is facility conditions. And so for the on-site portion of your audit, the conditions of the facility will be assessed by the third-party auditor. And then there's requirements for employee hygiene. For many years, I know packaging companies didn't pay too much attention to employee hygiene, but this is now a key requirement because employee hygiene can in turn affect the packaging that is going to your customers in terms of any potential microbiological hazards being transferred from personnel to the packaging. Other requirements include employee training, and for some of the standards, this is a fundamental requirement. So this requirement could, if it's not properly in place, actually cause you to end up with a major non-conformance. So there's a lot of focus on employee training, control of incoming products. So that is looking at your supplier approval process and how incoming products are handled and how they're ensured that there are no hazards with incoming products. Another key is traceability and recall. As we're seeing more and more in the news, there are recalls that involve packaging. And so it is key for you as a company to ensure that your recall and traceability program is tested at least annually by conducting a mock recall. Then there's pest control. As we know, pest control does have an impact on facilities, and that goes hand in hand with your sanitation or housekeeping program. And then there's record keeping and documentation as well. And that, of course, is key for your food safety program, because if you don't have good record keeping and documentation, in essence, you can't really have an audit. So let's turn our attention to the first of the standards, which is the SQF standard, or Safe Quality Food. And this standard is currently at edition 7.2. The scope for this standard is M, which is the production of food packaging, and FSC stands for food sector category, and that would be 27 when it comes to food packaging materials. This standard was benchmarked in October 15 of 2012, and the two modules that are very specific to packaging would be Module 2, which would cover what's called the system elements. So this is management commitment. This includes your HACCP program. This includes your internal audits. And then there is Module 13, which is what we call the good manufacturing practices for the production of food packaging. So this would cover your facilities, it would cover your transport and receiving, things like your maintenance program, pest control, sanitation, all that would be covered off under Module 13 of the SQF standard. The SQF, the objective with the SQF Institute, they have developed a separate guidance document that can assist companies seeking certification. And all these documents are available free of charge on the SQF website. Now, SQF as a standard is divided into several levels. And the two main levels that are particular to packaging includes level 2 certification, which looks at your food safety plan. So this certainly involves your HACCP program, and this is where you would have to identify any critical control points that you have in your facility. And then there's the level 3 requirements, which looks at the food quality plan. So it includes all the elements of level 2, but with the additional quality components as well for the level 3. And what we have found is that most facilities, when they're going for certification with this standard, will do the level 2 certification initially, and then advance up to level 3 after their initial certification. If you look at the SQF website, in terms of packaging companies, there are several hundred companies already certified to this particular standard. And you can look and see the statistics specifically for your part of the world. So whether you're in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, you can certainly see how many sites are certified and specifically which companies are certified. It will also give you information as to the expiration of those certificates, as well as the status of the certified companies. All right, let's turn our attention now to the BRC standard. And with BRC, that is the British Retail Consortium, they have a specific separate standard for packaging. As a matter of fact, for BRC, they were the very first standard to become benchmarked by GFSI. And this occurred in September 2012. This standard was published in February of 2011, and actually now they have updated the standard, and it's now at issue 5. Currently, with the BRC standard, there are over 2,000 suppliers in 70 countries worldwide that are certified to this standard. The new standard, being issue 5, is currently available on their website, and it is available as a free download. Currently, there is a lot of training and presentations happening in regards to the changes from issue 4 to issue 5, but issue 5 will become effective as of January 1st, 2016. So all sites that are currently certified or new sites attaining certification will have to meet the requirements of issue 5 as of January 1st, 2016. Similar to SQF, the scope is M, which is production of food packaging, and it does include packaging across the entire supply chain. Okay. With the BRC standard, it is established for both food contact and non-food contact. And what they have done is they've broken down the BRC standard into two categories of risk. So they have high risk and low or basic risk, which is the new term being used for issue 5. So when you think of high risk, this would be any packaging material that is in direct contact with food or products that are applied directly to the skin. So this would be, for example, things like toothpaste in a tube or deodorant. Those sort of things are for direct contact to the skin. The other category, which is called basic risk, applies to packaging material already where the products are already in their primary packaging or impermeable packaging. So basically for the basic risk, we're looking at secondary and tertiary packaging materials. Okay. The third of the standards that we're going to look at today is the FSSC 22,000 standard. And with the FSSC 22,000 standard, this standard is based on the requirements of the ISO standards as well as the PAS 223 standard. It is a combined standard, and we have found that packaging companies, if you are already certified to an ISO type of program, certainly find that this standard is an easier transition to go to because you've already got documentation in terms of ISO, right? This standard, if you are holding an ISO 22,000 certificate, you can upgrade to a full FSSC 22,000 standard, so Food Safety System Certification Standard. The difference with this standard is that it does not contain the quality components as the other GFSI standards. So that is the difference with this particular standard. With this standard, there is a certification no matter where you are in the world to this particular standard as well. Okay. The fourth standard that we will look at today is the IFS PACsecure standard. And the IFS PACsecure standard is a joint standard between the International Featured Standard and PACsecure, which originated in North America. These two standards merged and was GFSI benchmarked in December of 2013. This standard is the newest of the ones that relate to packaging. Certainly certification to the standard is non-prescriptive. This particular standard does include, especially for companies who are starting out. So if you're a smaller to mid-sized company and you do not have a HACCP program currently in place, so you're starting with HACCP, this standard does contain templates that can be used to help you to document and identify any hazards as well as critical control points in your particular facility. So this particular standard is certainly very helpful for companies that is starting out with little to no background training or knowledge when it comes to food safety programs. Currently, as you can see on the slide, North America does have 32 certified sites. The standard is also available, and more companies are becoming certified to it in Europe as well. And those are the two primary continents that we are seeing the IFS PACsecure standard being used. So in Europe currently, there are at least 10 sites that are certified to this particular standard. With all of the 4 standards that we have looked at so far, they are available on the individual websites for these standards. So you do have access to download the standards, to have an opportunity to read through the standards and be able to see what is required from each of the standards. Each standard is scored differently. So they do identify non-conformances in each of the standards. It's just the way that they're laid out is slightly different from standard to standard. Right? With some other information in terms of the IFS PACsecure standard is that it does cover all 5 main packaging categories that we identified at the beginning of the presentation. But with the IFS PACsecure standard, it also is broken up into the 24 key packaging process areas. And so this certainly is very helpful for companies who are trying to figure out, well, where does my company fit into any of this? And there are workbooks available with the standard that you are available for, I believe, purchase, and you can have access to those standards. Okay, this standard has also been accepted in the US. So as I said, it's the newest of the bunch, but it is certainly a standard that is gaining more momentum. Okay, so let's turn our attention for a few minutes to what is certification and third-party audits. What is that all about? Well, when it comes to certification, there are many companies who may have a HACCP program in place, and so they've already done a basic HACCP certification. But with the Global Food Safety Initiative, you are looking for certification through a third-party audit. And with certification bodies, those certification bodies must be accredited to be able to conduct those audits. So if you look on each of the individual standard websites, they will supply some certification bodies that you can use for conducting your third-party audit. Generally, when it comes to a certification audit for packaging companies, the average length of time for the certification is 2 days. Now, depending on the size of your facility, that could go down to about 1.5 days, or it can increase to possibly 2.5 days. But this includes both the documentation review as well as the tour of the facility and observing the implementation of your food safety program. The auditors that are being used for auditing packaging companies must have strong industry-specific experience in order to qualify to audit the food packaging sector category. And that is certainly something that all of the certification bodies are doing, is ensuring that there is calibration of auditors, as well as ensuring that the auditors have enough experience and conducting retraining sessions to ensure that the auditors are quite familiar with the 5 broad categories when it comes to packaging. So if, for example, you're having an audit for flexible packaging, the auditor would have to have experience in that industry category, or similarly for metal or glass, as the case would be. Right? There is an audit report that is provided after the audit is conducted, and that audit report, once it's completed by the auditor, is forwarded to a quality assurance check or a technical review conducted by the third-party certification body before the report becomes final. So certainly if a facility feels that there are some non-conformances that they don't feel are justified, there is a process where those requests or complaints can be heard prior to the audit report becoming final. Once you are issued your non-conformances, each facility must respond to those non-conformances by following up with corrective actions in the time period as specified by the individual standards. So you will have to complete all of those non-conformances, respond to them in the time frame, and then the auditor will follow up by looking at your corrective actions, and if they're accepted, closing out all those non-conformances. Once those non-conformances are closed out, then the certification body will approve the final audit report, and then the certificate can be issued to you as the facility. Typically, a certification body will issue that certificate within 45 days of the conclusion of the audit, because generally a facility will have 28 days for any minor non-conformances to be corrected, so that 45 days cover the time period that you need to correct non-conformances. Okay, so time for our next poll question. Right?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just loading that in the sidebar. Do you feel certification to GFSI for packaging manufacturers is beneficial? Yes or no? Obviously, when we asked at the start whether you did currently hold GFSI certification, I think it was about 30% said yes. So bearing that in mind, that most people might not be able to comment because they obviously don't know. But of the people that have voted, 100% have said yes, that it is beneficial. And that's very encouraging, isn't it, Karen?
Yes, it is. It is good to know that, and it shows that our attendees have become very familiar with these standards and the requirements of it, and also are seeing the benefits in terms of sales, in terms of reduction of potential recalls, just in terms of being able to access what we call the global markets. So it is beneficial to companies to become GFSI certified.
Well, somebody's just putting a little dampener on it. We're now down to 96%, but I think that's still I think that's still a sort of, okay. You can carry on now. Carry on.
Okay, great. So let's look at some of those benefits of certification. And one of the first benefits, of course, is your ability to meet the requirements of your customers, because all of us want to ensure that we keep our customers happy. And this has become one of the biggest driving forces, is your customers requiring certification by their packaging manufacturing facilities. It certainly opens doors to working with new customers. One of the things we found is potential new customers are actually going on the websites of the various standards to see if packaging companies are already certified as part of their supplier approval process. Of course, competition. And all of us face competition no matter where we are in the world. And if you look on many of the websites for the GFSI standards, you may see that your competitors are already certified to one of the global standards. And so, of course, for you to be able to position yourselves in terms of new contracts, you want to keep up with the competition. With certification, it shows a company's commitment to strong food safety practices. And this is certainly something that is looked at during your audit. Is management committed not just to implementing the program initially, but also being able to maintain the program long term? Right? After initial certification, one of the key things that will be looked at recertification is how our facilities continuing with continuous improvement and innovation. What resources are being put in place for continuous improvement to ensure that your food safety program works long term? And so that is key. And of course, being able to reduce costs by standardizing your processes. So these are some of the common certification benefits that we have seen with companies that have put in place a GFSI program so far. So now I'll just briefly take you through the certification process for those of you who may not have done this before. Certainly you want to take time to look at the standards that are available and then choose a standard that you feel would most apply to your facility. I would also encourage you to find out from your major customers which standard they are looking for you to become certified to, because you certainly want to do what your customers are requiring. So choose the standard, get some training, attend some webinars, attend an on-site course to become more familiar with the standard. And then next you want to choose a certification body. So look at the certification bodies for the standard you've chosen and see which ones are already approved by that particular standard. Then you're going to apply for certification. And I generally recommend that companies apply for the certification process at least 3 months prior to the target date that you're looking at, because it does become a bit challenging to have an auditor that's specific to the packaging industry and then very specific to your particular sector in the industry. So you want to ensure you have enough time to get an auditor assigned to you. You're next going to look at the training needs. So this is going to be the training needs for your food safety team, including the coordinator or the facilitator, whichever title you use, and ensure that everyone has received proper training. And then you're going to look at training that's going to be needed for the employees as a whole in your facility. You also want to do what's called a self-assessment. one of the good things about these various standards is they have provided a self-assessment tool or checklist on their websites. So certainly with SQF and BRC and the other ones, you can go and download that self-assessment tool. And I would recommend that you use the self-assessment tool initially before you start to see where you are currently and what then to be able to have a plan as to what you need to do to become compliant. And also you want to remember to do your internal audit prior to your third-party certification audit. Certainly use of a consultant can be helpful to many facilities, especially if you're having some difficulty in understanding the wording of the individual standard, and so that is an option for you to consider. Great. So after you've done that, you've done your pre-assessment and you've done your final internal audit, then you want to be ready for your desk audit as well as your facility audit, and those will be conducted based on the date that you have agreed to with the audit company that you're using. Okay. Once you have your audit conducted, then you're going to address the corrective actions. So any major or minor non-conformances, you're going to address those. Once those are completed, the certification body will verify or approve those corrective actions, and then your certificate would be issued from the certification body. Okay. When it comes to recertification, after your initial certification audit, recertification is based on your initial audit score. So each of the standards have a different scoring method, and based on the grade you receive on the initial audit, that will determine your recertification frequency. So that could be 6 months or a 12-month frequency. With the GFSI standards, it is an annual audit. So that audit must occur prior to your certificate expiring. It's very important that your recertification audit is scheduled prior to your certificate expiring. There is a danger that a lot of companies get into in thinking that since their first certification was good, then everything is okay with their companies, and tend to slack off and wait until about a month before recertification to try to get everything back in place. But you want to ensure that your program is being followed day to day and that food safety requirements become part of your company's culture. Okay. Some of the standards are going to what's called unannounced audits. BRC has certainly made that optional for packaging manufacturers. So you can choose to go to an unannounced audit after your first initial certification audit. SQF does have unannounced audits as part of its program. And the purpose of unannounced audits is to see and to ensure that you're doing what you say you're doing day to day. So with an unannounced audit, the auditor can show up at your facility somewhere within that window of about 30 to 60 days prior to your certificate expiring. And you have to allow the auditor access to your facility. So that's on the floor within the first hour of them arriving. So I want to encourage everyone to get their program in place based on whichever standard that you choose to go for certification towards, and then ensure that it becomes part of your company's culture, and you want to ensure that your food safety program is going to work long term. Okay? All right, so that brings us to the time for questions.
Okay, Karen, that was great. Thanks very much. Unbelievable. I don't know if you noticed them, but I disappeared for about 2 minutes. I lost my internet connection, and I thought, oh no, that's it. So I crashed, but I logged back in, and you were still presenting. So that was fantastic. What has happened though, I've lost all the questions that I could see in the sidebar. They've all disappeared. So anybody that did ask a question, could you please just type it in again, please? That was great, Karen. It was a great primer and a great overview, especially for those who are perhaps about to embark on it, maybe being asked by customers or different customers, you know, to achieve a GFSI standard, and what does that mean? So that was a great primer. And as we could see from the poll, I think only 1/3 of the attendees already have certification. So there's a lot of people in the boat of this being demanding and being new to them. Just one thing to say that, you know, when you're talking about my background's BRC packaging, I know quite a lot about that. And that originally in the UK came out in 2002, edition 1. And you know, the new version, that's version 5. Right. I've just done a gap analysis that's actually on the IFSQM website from 4 to 5. And just a couple of the improvements to that standard. The grading system's changed, whereas before, in order to get an A grade, you had to have less than 10 minor non-conformities. Right. Now you can get a double A grade if you get less than 5.
That's correct.
Yeah, and you can actually get a double A star, and that's with if you get a star if you choose to have an unannounced audit. So that's to drive continual improvement. Another big thing was senior management commitment. Now, the most senior site person must attend the opening and closing meeting of the audit, which is a good thing. And also, there's a new section in there about print control and print and artwork control, which is all about, obviously, things like getting the ingredients right, not mixing things, allergens potentially coming involved there. So there's a big section on print and artwork control, and also a big theme all the way through version 5 is root cause analysis. You know, when you have a problem, you've got to get to the bottom of it to make sure it doesn't happen again. And also risk assessment. They're mentioned, root cause analysis and risk assessment are mentioned all the way through. So it's, if anybody wants to see that, that's on the IFSQM website. Okay, just okay. So let's go over to the questions now, and let's, if you can see, maybe you can pick up some in the chat sidebar as well there, Karen.
Yes, I am seeing a few questions, and I am seeing a few responses to those questions as well. So there was a question about if you want to change certification body, but not the certification standard, will it be an issue? And absolutely, you can change certification bodies. You would have to change a certification body within at least 3 months before the expiration of your current certificate, but you can certainly stay within the same standard.
Okay, that's great. I spotted that. Yeah. Any other questions? There's one. What is PACsecure? I mean, you did mention that.
Yes, PACsecure is one of the newer of the GFSI standards, and it's combined with IFS, which is the International Featured Standard. And it is a standard that is specific to packaging companies. It does include templates in there for helping you to put together your HACCP program. So if you're starting out from scratch and have never implemented a HACCP program before, this takes you through it step by step. Okay, so it's helpful for those.
Okay. Hey. Okay. Yeah, I did see this one before. Thomas has said, will US FDA accept audits by accredited certification bodies to benchmark standards as satisfying Food Safety Modernization Act packaging supplier management requirements for food processors? Have you got any?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The Food Safety Modernization Act just went into final ruling just several days ago. And so that's one of the key things that we're actually waiting to see if they are going to accept certification by these third-party bodies under FSMA. And certainly more information, I believe, will be forthcoming around that over the next week or two. I know for the company that I work for, NSF International, we are certainly pushing for that acceptance.
Okay, great. Okay. Steve is asking, the FSSC standards has an additional category in HACCP of OPRPs, operational prerequisite procedures. Can you speak to the added value for packaging manufacturers? Is there any added value of that, or is it just the same thing in a different box?
It's pretty much the same thing in a different box. Operational prerequisites are very similar to what we know just as regular prerequisite programs. It's just worded differently under the FSSC standard. Okay.
Yeah, they've all got the different terminology and layouts and things, but essentially they've all got the same broad sections and have risk assessment, hazard analysis, HACCP, whatever you want to call it, at the heart of it. Let's have a look. What frequency of audit do you recommend for primary packaging supplier?
The frequency of audit is going to be based on your audit score. So your initial audit score, if you score very well, as Simon referred to, if you got like a AA score, then your audit frequency would be every 12 months. However, if you attained like a D grade, then your audit frequency would be 6 months. So it's all based on your audit score at your initial certification audit.
Okay, great. What else have we got there? Are there any, code is asking, are there any government issued incentives for becoming certified for additional standards? That'd be nice.
That would be wonderful, and you would certainly have to check in your country of manufacture. But right now, these are industry driven in terms of becoming certified. And so that's all I can tell you. Check with your country. I know some governments, for example, here in Canada, they do provide some funding to packaging companies to encourage you to become certified to a food safety program, but it's dependent on where you are in the country of manufacture.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. I did pick up on one. It's just come back to me now. A question before was somebody said that if your HACCP risk assessment doesn't identify any hazards, can you exclude basically some of the hygiene requirements related to maybe personnel hygiene or the buildings and infrastructure or whatever? But basically they were saying if your risk assessment doesn't identify those as hazards in your process, can you exclude them?
Well, depending on the standard that you are using, the standards do have very specific requirements around what you can and cannot exclude. So your risk assessment would have to show that there are no issues with any of those potential hazards, and that would be considered in your audit. But when it comes to exclusions and exemptions, each standard is very specific about what you can exclude or exempt.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can't go at excluding the whole standard. And
no, you can't.
No, it's more something that's very specific to your products and process, so it doesn't.
That's correct.
That particular clause doesn't apply, or something like that.
Yeah, clauses may not apply, but you can't exclude, half the standard. It won't work.
That's quite interesting. What non-conformances are encountered by food safety auditors in the packaging industry?
A lot of the non-conformances are around pest control program not being effective. Other things include recall and traceability. So a lot of facilities are not conducting that mock recall that's recommended to be done. Employee training is another one that shows up quite often. The maintaining any identified critical control points and actually having the records and documentation to be able to support that on an ongoing basis. That comes up quite often. Housekeeping, that's a key one. Whenever it comes to packaging companies, housekeeping generally also shows up as one of the top 10 non-conformances as well.
Yeah, and just to say, I mean, when we're talking about achieving a AA to getting less than 5 minor non-conformities or less than 10 for an A, it's in any facility. It's very easy. You could walk into any facility and pick up a handful of minor non-conformities very, very easily. You've got to be in tip-top shape, to achieve these top grades. Let's see. We do have another one. You might not know this one. I don't know. In North America, what percentage of packaging manufacturers have third-party certification? Could you please provide some insights?
Certainly, I can do that. Yes. In North America, for the SQF standard, there are 356 certified sites. For the BRC standard, there are at least 117 sites certified in North America. For the FSSC standard, there are approximately 150 sites in North America. And for the IFS PACsecure, there are 26 sites certified in North America.
But I mean, it's only an estimate. I mean, we don't know how many food packaging plants are there in North America.
No.
There must be tens of thousands. There's got to be. Right.
So those are just, and you can certainly go on each of the individual websites and they will give you up to the minute information, up-to-date information as to how many sites are certified in the various regions. But we don't know how many packaging facilities there are in North America.
Okay. Evan and Brenda have just made a couple of points there. They're not questions, they're just good points for the attendees. Question, can I get a functional brochure on food packaging online? I'm not sure what that question means. No. I don't know. Maybe you can clarify that, Awateo. Not sure what that means as it stands. Any more? Because we've reached the hour mark now. We're bang on time. I think Karen needs to go and enjoy the rest of the sun this afternoon. I think what we'll do is we'll leave it at that, Karen. It's been great. what we can do is I'll collate all the questions anyway, and I'll email them to you. And if there's anything we can pick up afterwards that we miss, we do follow up with an email to all registrants, so we can do that. But for now, I'd just like to say, Karen, on behalf of myself, the IFSQN, and the Food Safety Fridays team and attendees today, thanks very much. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Simon. It was my pleasure to be able to do this webinar.
Brilliant. All right. Hope to see you again soon. Enjoy your weekend, Karen.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you got a lot out of it. We have got the recorded today. We've got the slides. We've got the certificate. We'll bundle all that up, and I will send an email, normally later today or maybe tomorrow over the weekend. You'll receive that. If you don't receive it, just drop me an email at team@ifsqn.com and I'll personally deliver that to you. So thanks very much. Next week, we've got TASUP, Threat Analysis Critical Control Points with Ruth Bell. That's on Friday, Food Safety Friday. Next Thursday, we've got the Practical HACCP. Hope to see some of you there. So if you download your certificate, all this to say from me is thanks for attending today. It's been another interesting and informative session. I hope to see you next week. Have a food safe day. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Take care.